Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Can everybody hear me okay? It's got a voice is good? All right. Good evening again. On behalf of the board and the staff of the Portland Museum of Art, I'd like to welcome you to this great evening we have tonight, and to thank you for joining us for the Fall Barnet Scholars Program Lecture, David C. Driskell and the Legacy of Mentorship. Thank you to the Will Barnet Foundation, the Barnet family, Barnet, who is with us here tonight. Thank you, Ona and the Barnets. One of the great things about this evening and talking to Ona is all the relationships you're going to hear us talk about this evening, where Will Barnet knew David. David knew this person mentored this person. How many people in this room, or who we're going to be talking about tonight, revolve around the relationships and mentorships of David Driskell. So it's really a magical family night for all of us to be together, thinking about David, who's no longer with us, but all the relationships and enduring impact David has had on so many of us. I'd also like to begin by acknowledging that the Portland Museum of Art occupies land that was and still is inhabited by the Wabanaki peoples, including the Abenaki, Maliseet, Micmac, Passamaquoddy, and Penobscot nations in the land of the dawn, or what is known today as Maine. David Driskell was an artist, scholar, and a collector. His remarkable work encompassed a wide range of media, including painting, printing, and collage. And he both taught and learned from leading American artists, including Will Barnet. His 1976 landmark exhibition, 2 Centuries of Black American Art, organized by the LA County Museum Foundation for a field that has since flourished. It is one of the most important museum exhibitions of the 20th century. It's hard to imagine that was almost 50 years ago. David was a close advisor to me in the Portland Museum of Art. I first met David in 1998 when my family moved to Maine. We are thrilled tonight to honor his legacy today through this program commemorating the recently opened exhibition. I hope you all have seen it or will see it, David Driskell Collector. This show builds on the recent retrospective David Driskell Icons of Nature and History, curated by Dr. Julie McGee and co-organized by the PMA and the High Museum of Art. Julie is also with us here tonight, and I want to thank her for her scholarship and commitment to the Driskell family. Thank you, Julie. With this exhibition, we are honored to usher in a new chapter of David's legacy with the debut of the David C. and Thelma G. Driskell collection at the Portland Museum of Art. We're grateful to the Driskell family for fostering this ongoing investment in David's life and work through such a transformative collection. And to Darius Driskell, who's also with us here tonight, I would like to do a huge thank out to Darius Driskell. As I said, it's a little bit of a family night, so bear with me. I also would like to thank a few supporters of this exhibition. As you all know, in our climate right now, people who are putting money towards art and culture and supporting exhibitions, I want to say their names loud and clear. We want to extend our great thanks for the support of this exhibition to Billy Aaron, Rhonda and Christopher Matheson, Margaret and Terry Stent, Brenda and Larry Thompson, Sue and John Whelan, Sharon and Timothy Van Gaal, FT Stent Family Foundation, the Lunder Foundation, the Peter and Paula Lunder Family, and Bath Savings Institution. Thank you for your support. Thank you, Marcia, for the woohoo. Throughout his career, David and his wife, Thelma, built deeply personal holdings of art that reflected their many meaningful relationships with artists. Early works in the collection included those of David's peers and professors at Howard University, including James A. Porter and Lois Mile Jones. The collection would later incorporate works by previous generations of Black artists who helped lay the path for the vibrant artistic community of David's era. including Edward Mitchell Bannister, Romare Bearden, Elizabeth Catlett, and Alma Thomas. I'm going to give you just a little glimpse of the show, if you haven't gotten back there. David C. Driskell Collector. You'll hear a lot about the pines. Those are two beautiful paintings of pines. David loved painting pine trees, and they're so beautiful. We have two in the exhibition. And the Bannister, which was in the 2 Centuries exhibition at the LA County Museum 50 years ago. And the Louise Miles Jones, I'm going to leave on this one because in reading and doing my always kind of freshening up of David's scholarship, I do return to Dr. McGee's book on David and learned that Louise Miles Jones actually nominated David for his residency program to come to Skowhegan. So we have her to thank for David's being her. She was the mentor to David. We have her to thank for David and his family coming to Maine and being here ever since. So a huge shout out to Louise Miles Jones. As tonight is celebrating mentorships, I just want to add about Louise Miles Jones, which I just did off cuff, so I don't have to read that paragraph again. This is a collection built on relationships and mentorship. This is our guide to this evening's discussion, which will be led by our friends at Indigo Arts Alliance. Together, they will share how David's fierce artistic advocacy and community building continue to inspire us today. We need folks like David and the leadership at Indigo Arts Alliance more today than we ever have. So we are very proud to be partnering with the Barnet family, Indigo Arts Alliance, and the Driskell family tonight. Together, we will share how David's fierce artistic advocacy and community building continue to inspire us today. With that, it's my pleasure to now introduce Marcia and Daniel Minter, co-founders of Indigo and leading art advocates and very close friends. Based here in Portland, Indigo Arts Alliance is a transformational arts organization dedicated to shifting historical injustices while elevating the expansive field defining work of Black and Brown artists. In less than 10 years, they have become one of the most important cultural voices and leaders in Maine. I can even remember when David came to the opening of Indigo Arts Alliance almost 10, 11 years ago. Marcia Minter is Indigo's Chief Officer of Strategic Growth and Innovation. Her leadership in the arts has transcended her expansive and prolific career as a creative visionary. She has served as the executive director for some of the world's leading brands and has contributed to multiple organizations as valued trustee and thought partner, including at the PMA, the Maine Arts Commission, and the Haystack Mountain School of Craft. Daniel Minter, her partner, is an internationally acclaimed artist whose awe-inspiring and multidisciplinary practice bridges painting, assemblage, printmaking, and book illustration, and anything else you can imagine you could make David, I'm thinking of David Driskell, who also was a mentor to Daniel. Daniel's stunning work brings together 16 red pine trunks to symbolize the strength and community, solidarity, unity, and endurance. The power of the pine that we saw in David's work is a poignant link to David's practices. Daniel centered this beloved and spiritual subject throughout his work. This piece is on view now at the Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens, and I hope you have a chance to see it. I now would like to introduce and bring to the stage Marcia and Daniel Minter.
Hello, everybody. In the interlude we had in the gallery, I was talking to Ona and saying that whenever I have the opportunity to talk about David, I always meet the most amazing people that all knew him in some shape, way, or form, and it feels like connecting with family. A large, incredibly diverse and beautiful family. This will be pretty organic and not very long from us because we want to make sure that you have time to hear from the fellows and from our executive director, Jordea Benjamin. But David was a dear friend to us. He was our mentor. and in time became Indigo Arts Alliance's elder advisor. But before we talk a little bit more about David, well, actually, we'll talk about David throughout, but I just want to share that we moved to Maine about almost 23 years ago now, after living in Atlanta and New York and Chicago and a bunch of other cities. And Daniel, I believe, was the first to meet David. And I'm not really sure, how did you meet him?
Yes, I met David Driskell. I was introduced to David by a friend who wanted to make sure that I met him while he was here. Victoria Hershey, she said that he's only here during the summer, and so we were both at an event together, and she made sure that I met David. And at the event, we didn't get to talk very much, but he said he gave me his phone number and said we can chat sometime, while I'm here. I didn't get to talk to him until the next spring, and then it was basically just letting him know that I'd been thinking about him, and I dropped by his studio, and that started a really important friendship for me, because I know that his summer was very busy, and it was really his getaway from work and such, and a time for him to relax and paint. But I felt really comfortable with David, and I hope it was reciprocated, because I'm the kind of person who enjoyed dropping by, and I did, and I would like to just drop by his studio, and if he's there and we could talk, fine. If he's not, or if there's something else going on, fine with me. That's cool. And so and that to me, and David being open to that, I think was a connection to both of our rural upbringing, and the idea that if you are friends and neighbors, that you can drop by and just chat and talk for a little while, or chat and talk for an extended time. Yeah. And that's the way
it kicked off initially. And I remember that day because I came home from work, and Daniel was so happy. He was like a little kid. I spent the whole day with David Driskell. And he grew up just like down the road from where I grew up in South Georgia. And I'm like, what did you talk about? You talked about your work. Did you show me your work? He's like, no, we talked about pine trees and pecans and what else?
We talked about plants and fields, and just basically we talked about a slower life than what we have today.
And so what emerged over many, many visits like that, and what I observed mostly for several years, a little bit more from a distance, was what bonded them. And what really bonded them is that they could see the invisible in each other's work. They immediately understood what the undergirding was. And then as that relationship developed, David would drop by our house. And every summer, we would have our annual pig roast.
Every other summer, we would have that.
Every other summer.
Too much work to do it every summer.
Yeah. Okay, we're not telling everybody about the pig roast. But
all right.
We would have a biannual pig roast in our backyards and connected with our neighbors, and it was a huge event. And David would come, and he would bring the whole family and any friends that were visiting him at the time.
And Thelma would always sneak me a pie, a sweet potato pie. She would always bring one of those for me and say, this put this away. This is not to put on the table out here. Put this away. This is for you.
Yes, Daniel got his special sweet potato pies. And so, all of that, again, was a part of this undergirding that was resonant in Daniel's practice, resonant in David's practice, and resonant in their worldviews and the way that they engaged with people, no matter who they were, no matter what strata or whatever, that people were people. And everyone had value, and no one was throwaway. And so, as many of you are aware, David had a reverence for the natural world in its entirety. But what was so beautiful about it and what connected him so much to us was it was a sacred and a deep love of the natural world that understood that people, humans, are a part of the natural world. And he was a deeply spiritual person and had his own knowledge on the ways in which spirituality had meaning. And I often recall conversations we had about our time in Salvador, Bahia, Brazil. Daniel and I were not there at the same time as David, but we had many, many mutual friends that spent time there over years as well. And his practice and many of the paintings, even a couple that are in the exhibition here, are influenced by that experience, as is Daniel's work. So we had yet another thread that connected us all. So over those relationships with David and the Driskell family, it just grew more and more. And so for me, as I was ready to transition from my corporate career into one as an independent curator, parlaying my business knowledge into what is now Indigo Arts Alliance, David became my ear. And so David never dismissed any of my ideas. He was always made time to hear them. He only encouraged me, and his vote of confidence was the catalyst I needed to feel sure that our dreams and my dreams had value. David was the first person that we shared our business plan for what Indigo could be and brainstormed around the vision and what the values would be for the organization. David's advice around mentorship, having an organization rooted in mentorship at its core, informed everything and continues to inform the way that everything that we do in terms of our artist pairings. We pair visiting artists with a local artist. We have the Driskell Fellowship that is dedicated exclusively to local Black and brown artists or artists who have a deep connection or family connection to Maine. And all of that was because we drew on our Southern upbringings. We drew on this idea of, what is the expression? Each one teach one. And understanding that the relationship is more important than the thing, So Indigo focuses on the front end of an artistic practice, the thoughts, the ideas, not the product. And so...
Yes, and also the ideas that much of your learning, much of the ways that you understand your artwork and your practice and is not going to be learned in an institution. It's going to be learned through your connections. It's going to be learned through your community and through your mentors and the people who you connect with. That's where a lot of the learning is going to be. And also a lot of the learning and understanding of the work that you're going to do is going to be through observation of the natural world.
And yes, through that, but also in the kind of being an ear and the coaching and the professional development and the sharing of personal stories that happen when you're in relationship. David, as just like us, never believed in the hype that artists want to be holed up hold up is an official expression, in their studio alone working and then come out with a masterpiece. David believed in the power of connection, and so did we, and that is the heart and soul of what we do at Indigo. And David had the opportunity to be engaged with the formation and the seeding of his own fellowship that you will hear about now. So with that, I would like to hand things over to Indigo Arts Alliance's Executive Director, Jordia Benjamin.
It's such a joy to be in the room with you all. You're looking good, you're smelling good. I don't smell, but it's a joy to be next to and on stage with brilliant minds, brilliant creative minds, our past and current Driskell Fellows. So y'all give it up for our panelists. So I also want to open up with a little bit of story time as well. I'm listening to Daniel and Marcia's account of their first interaction and the excitement of meeting David C. Driskell, and also Mark's even comments of meeting Driskell for the first time. What did that mean? So 10 years ago, before I was a part of Indigo, and even in the Indigo network, before I even moved to Maine, I was the Romero Bearden Graduate Fellow at the St. Louis Art Museum. And we planned a trip to go to DC. And at the time, Dr. Driskell curated an exhibition from the collection of the Cosby family. I was fortunate, along with some other individuals, to spend the whole day with him. That was my first interaction in meeting him, and I got the catalog of the exhibition. He signed it. I said, Dr. Driskell, I know you just met me, but this is not going to be the last time we meet. She was like, okay. All right. That fellowship was only for a year. I found myself in Maine via Colby College Museum of Art, where I was the Merkin educator, overseeing all of the public programs. And one year, the museum decides to honor, guess who? Dr. Driskell. And I was in charge of curating the event and the full program. So I was truly excited because I'm like, see, here it comes, full circle. I'm meeting this guy, holding up to the promise I made to him. And when he arrived, which was about 5 minutes before the talk actually started, and I was sweating crazy because like, oh my gosh, what happened? Is he okay? He was supposed to arrive an hour ago. He just cruised on in and was like, here I am. And I was like, Dr. Driskell, you remember I told you we were going to meet again? And he's like, you were right, Jordia, you were right. And every year since, of course, you already heard the story of how involved Driskell was in returning to Maine, painting in Maine, utilizing his studio, and anytime he arrived on Colby campus, he made it a point to reach out to me and say, I'm coming on campus, I better see you. I say, oh yes, I will be there. I block out time. I am no longer working for the museum. I am now Driskell's mentor, a mentee. So I just wanted to, again, ground us in the space of talking about the power of mentorship, what it means to be seen, what it means to be pulled in, held, and have a community to talk to. So my first questions to our fellow is going to be around this topic of mentorship. And we already spoke to what's at the essence of Indigo Arts Alliance, which is cultivating community in the spirit of mentorship. And when we're speaking about mentorship, I know that's a large term that has been utilized in so many different ways. So in the ways of how we see and use the term, it's a dialogue between and among artists who share cultural histories and experiences. This is essentially the co-mentorship essence that is in all of our residency programs, because now we have 3. The mentorship pairing of the visiting and the local artists, the Driskell Fellowship, and another fellowship that now honors another scholar that's in the Indigo Network that we launched this year in February, titled the C. Daniel Dawson Curatorial and Research Fellowship. So for our heirs and our fellows, how has mentorship personally or professionally and or creatively been a guide for you? Go ahead. I know that's a hard way to ask, but.
Okay. Is it on?
Mhm.
Are we good? Okay. I mean, I can point to beyond my time as a. It's on. It's on. It's on. Okay. So beyond the fellowship, you all Indigo have continued to make me feel part of the community. I am part of your community, and I think a really good kind of example of that is this year, where I was offered the opportunity to be program coordinator for Daniel's work up at the Botanical Gardens, and I worked with Daniel for 4 months. He might have gotten sick of me saying, Daniel, you gotta do this, do that. But I learned so much, and I feel like really that 4 months felt exactly like what Marcia and Daniel, you were talking about with David. That's how I feel with Daniel. So, I mean, there is a lineage within itself of continued mentorship. And as a person who is running a small studio space for creatives of marginalized backgrounds now, I have been able to kind of bring these conversations into what I'm now doing in that space, and to continue that that kind of mentorship, and hopefully for many years to come.
I think also this idea of mentorship really talks about the richness of community and not seeing an individual art practice as one solo success, but you being part of a larger network that can keep on being resourced over and over again. And it's been incredibly helpful for me, both as an artist and as an educator, when I see young artists of color that have questions that are here in Maine, a lot of times from, far cities. I'm like, there are resources, there are people to talk to, representation is important. And the other part about it is it gets people excited to re-engage with these communities. And I think that's an extremely important part of how this legacy from David Driskell is able to ripple out and continuously affect bodies of people over and over and over again. Oh, I'm Ben Spalding, hi.
Okay, sweet. Thank you everyone for coming. My name is Kevin Higgins. I was hoping to share a quick story, but excited to share this story. So, when I had my residency, I had a solo exhibition coming up. It was happening I think a few months after the residency ended. And I remember having my first 2 weeks in the residency. I think Daniel was busy off on his adventures doing what he was doing. I remember my first 2 weeks were a huge struggle. And I think I had a habit of entering the studio with the mind of trying to conquer. And I remember the first day I met Daniel, he was like, hey, how's it going? What's going on? What are you working on? And I was like, I've been really trying to push myself, take myself out of my comfort zone, this, that, the third. And he just stopped and stared at me for a second. He's like, really? He's like, I kind of like to stay in my comfort zone. And it took a little bit for me to realize. I was like, what? Are we supposed to, isn't that how you progress? Isn't that how you move forward? And through further conversations throughout the residency and just observing him and how he approaches his practice, I realized what he truly meant is if you trust your curiosity, if your curiosity is there, your love for what you're doing, you can't help but progress forward. And that just completely changed the trajectory of my practice. So that's something I remind myself literally every single day of pretty much. So yeah, it just kind of gave me the okay to, hey man, it's okay to relax, chill, have fun. This is you, this is your thing, do your thing, be yourself. You're good, so.
Thank you. So my name is Rakisha Metzger, and I should say that my name is Dr. Rakisha Metzger. And I'll say thanks to Dr. David Driskell, I can call myself a doctor. I went to the Institute for Doctoral Studies in the Visual Arts, which is located here in Portland, Maine, where Dr. David Driskell was one of the founding visiting faculty members there, as well as a recipient of the PhD, honorary PhD in 2013. So following that legacy and this idea of mentorship and what it meant for Dr. David Driskell to add to the conversation of what it meant for the artist philosopher to show up in the world, what it means for Black and brown people voices to be heard, and also the work that we do and why it's important that we make the work that we make. That is what mentorship means to me, where 2002, my husband, although I was not married in 2002, he was a mentee of David Driskell's. And so while I was doing my research a couple years ago, I said, Chris, did you know that you were in the book with David Driskell? So to see that trajectory and my husband picture in there and knowing the mentorship that he had under Dr. David Driskell, and then my coming into Indigo Arts Alliance because of my husband being from Lisbon Falls, it gave me an opportunity to step into a space that I didn't know existed until, again, the spiritual opened the space for me to be aware of what was actually taking place. And there was this trajectory and this kind of, almost seeing into the future that I didn't see, that was a past that became a present. And I know it's a lot I'm an artist philosopher, so sometimes, again, these words get all twisted, but I can, if you understand what I'm saying, and I think that some of the ways that we can see through the work that Dr. David Driskell and his mentorship and legacy actually leaves, to the point where I'm looking up at this picture and I saw myself at David Driskell's, house, and Marcia and Daniel said I was one of the first David Driskell fellows that actually got a chance to visit his house, where it was a couple years before I went there. I said, I wonder if his family still comes up here. And so to be invited in, just like a friend, or to stop by or drop by, you could still see that mentorship and how much and what it meant for David Driskell, Dr. David Driskell, to have on people and with people. And celebrate Bella's birthday, yes. Yeah.
Thank you for that. That is so true. The legacy of building community is embodied in the way people are pulled in the way people stick around, and also looking back and reciprocating forwards. So in Dr. Driskell's artwork, there's utilizations of motives, motifs, some symbolism, again, also conceptual frameworks that stems right out of the African diaspora. So I want to know, are there elements in your work that are stemming from African, Black, historical and cultural lineage?
I'll go again just because I think my work was up there, and some of the things that I see and that I think about, and African diasporic work, but also just in work in general, in David Driskell's work about the light and how the light actually shines through. And so even when we are looking at the dark sky at night, the stars are shining even when we don't see them. So to be able to reach through and see the spiritual element is an important aspect that comes through in my work and what I like to reflect and try to show through the work that I make, and it touches us all. The sun rays is for everybody. And so that is one of the things that I'll say that helps me to be able to do the work that I do and make the work that I make.
When you speak about light, I'm also thinking about Rosalba, how you use light as a way to, again, illuminate your perspectives and documentation of the landscape.
Yeah, I mean, kind of bringing those together. Diaspora is always kind of at the front of my mind because I was not born in this country, but I have been in Maine since I was 3 months old. So it's the first place that I actively remember. And so my own background is of Indigenous and Afro-Indigenous and Spanish Indigenous Peruvian heritage. And so that is always in my work and also reflected in the way that I connect with land, seeing it as not just a thing over there to use, but as living entities, many living entities, plant relatives, soil relatives, these microscopic little beings that we can't see. They are just as important as we are, and so that's always kind of primary in my work, along with figuring out what home means, where is home, having lived here, having lived in New Mexico, Chicago. Those are all now pieces of me that enter into my work.
When I think about David Driskell's practice and looking at the variety by which he approached the mediums, we have so many different ways. There's oils paintings, there's lino cuts, there is things that are representational, there's things that lean into the abstract or more meditative. There's a sense of play that comes throughout all of this and experimentation that seems inexhaustible, which is always really inspiring, that it's not a case of not taking it seriously, but to have fun. I think that also in this, there's a moment where it says, David at rest at his home. I'm like, oh, actually this idea of rest, this idea of leisure not as an oppositional thing, but actually as part of what resources you to come back and do this work constantly is really, really inspiring. I think from like a formal level, what I really get from David's work is a sense of rhythm, and especially with the collage pieces, where we have these motifs, masks that are chopped up, reframed, and then repurposed in a way that feels like very contemporary. For myself, a part of my practice in Portland that I'm still trying to figure out how it integrates our practice is music. I collect records, I play music. A lot of this music that I play is historically made by Black and brown people. And so thinking about this in tandem is that it's through music, it's through these forms and colors that the past consistently is able to dialogue with the future over and over and over again.
I think it's funny. I think there was a point in time where I would have told you no. There is no like Black motifs. There's no because I was adopted and I was raised by like a white family, so I've always considered myself a little racially ambiguous. But I think since joining this community, and I think especially, again, having that studio adjacent to Daniel, and just having, that was like kind of my first experience of having a mentor that was a Black man. And I think just showed me there's no, I thought, oh, being Black is this very specific thing, and I learned that it's not a monolithic thing. It's you are Black by you're Black. So I think by the virtue of the fact that I'm Black, every mark that's made, every gesture that is made is that symbolism. It's in there regardless of whether the intention is there or not. It just is. So, yeah, I guess, don't know any other further way to explain that.
Thank you all. Rosalba, you talked about the interconnectionness that is kind of weaved into, and Benjamin, you spoke about the memory, possible memory materials can hold, right? So I want to bring us to a question of saying, when we recenter Driskell themes like nature, like this interconnection that holds us all as a community, cultural memory, but also material memory, and how all of these elements are kind of passed on, what does that language, or how does that language show up and is like rooted in your work?
I keep going first, but that's fine. So actually for me, I was trying to think of a methodology and how it is that I'm able to do the work or make the work. And so the language that I came up with, I call spirit literacy. So Bell Hooks talked about this need for literacy to be able to come to the sense of freedom and understanding that. And so again, when we understand what literacy is, it means to read and write and comprehend language. So for me, spirit literacy then means to read and write in the language of the spirit, and not just write and read in it, but to actually feel it, to be able to sense it. And again, when you can sense it, then you understand it. And that understanding is not something that we come to overnight. It's not something that, is going to be something that we're going to read in a book, but it can be. And it comes in different forms. So it's not just in one way. It can come through poetry, it can come through a movement, it could come through dance, or it could come through the visual arts in any sense and form. And that is, for me, what I'm looking for and thinking about when Dr. David Driskell talks about reaching through the spiritual element through the symbolic form of presence. And again, how do we experience that? And so for me, I needed a way to write about it, but also to be able to speak about it in a language that I don't think people were telling me, but I had to make for myself in order to explain it to others.
Okay. Materials hold history. Materials hold our histories. And I very much think of materials as their own, having their own kind of living spiritual selves. And so when I'm making, I'm very much thinking about what I'm working with and the impact that it has on the environment, from the tools that I use to the amount of water that I use, to the electricity, where that comes from. And that's very much been ingrained in my practice throughout grad school and beyond. And just one of the reasons that I decided to move away from New Mexico, where there was a very large and supportive Indigenous presence there that I was really inspired by and made community with. To Maine, was thinking about how much water I use for my natural dye processes, which is another connection to my homeland in Peru, and also kind of symbolizes how through colonization those materials moved through the world and how they enacted violence on our bodies, but also how they have connected us. And so that's kind of always in my mind whenever I'm working, whether I'm working with photographic light-sensitive materials or whether I'm weaving on my backstrap loom, where these materials come from and how can I respect them as I put them out into the world and give them their own platform.
I think similarly for me, it comes into a specific relationship to place. In the works that we see upstairs, the two like really, really effective paintings, talking to Kevin about this, the two Pines paintings are really stellar, right? They're so beautiful. There's so much movement. There's a sense of velocity and time in them. But when you stand in front of them, it feels as though you are understanding a person's ability to relate to the subject matter, not as someone that's extrapolating the image or trying to capture something, but having the subject work through them. So it kind of takes away the sort of hierarchy of the artist, like capturing the landscape in a certain way, and it knocks it down to having this image or this thing or the presence of it work through you in the material, which I think is really, really special, especially like working through materials and having a certain sensitivity to them, understanding that like if you shift your relationship to the making, the image, the materials, let them work through you. You're the vehicle by which this thing is able to make itself.
I don't think it's like necessarily directly to the brush to canvas specifically, but I find that I think my artwork is just a digestion of life, I guess, and that's like as much as I could pinpoint it. So I find that I need to have days of just being by myself, and whether it's, I live in New York City, and a lot of the time I find myself in Central Park, right? Just to be next to trees and to be in just like vast areas of grass where it's just not fully concrete. And that could be also because of my upbringing in Vermont. It could be many different things. I think naturally, just as human beings, like we're naturally just, we're supposed to be outside. And I find that after long periods spent in nature is generally the times when the work flows the best. I can have a lot of social interaction. It can be a lot of, just in the city, going to work, doing whatever it is, but it's more so after time spent in nature. I think things are they just come together a lot more fluidly, naturally. Yeah.
A common thread you all were talking about is being educated, right? Learning through the material, learning through the environment, learning to sit and let information flow to you and through you. So I'm also thinking of Driskell and his role as an educator, right? And I too, my background is education, worked in museums for several years, and I had a homework for our fellows in preparation for today. Don't worry, I will distribute homework assignments to you all before we leave. But something I wanted our fellows to just sit with and retain kind of some information or reflection is to rewatch Sam's Pollard's film, In the Absence of Light. It was a part of the Portland Museum of Art programming when the exhibition of Driskell's Icon in Nature was on view, and Indigo Arts Alliance, our co-founder Marcia Mentor, interviewed the director. But as we were watching, or I rewatched it for prep for today, there was a question I wanted to ask, because in the current climate that we're creating artwork in, where Black and brown artists, significance is trying to be silenced and underwritten and hidden. So Theastrogate, which was an artist that was featured in the film, kind of ended on this note of asking this question to artists: are you willing to make in the absence of light? So to my fellows, what does that mean, creating in the absence of Black and brown artwork being to the forefront?
I think just like continually showing up no matter the circumstance. And I think the biggest thing to remember is, what you're making is super personal to you, but it's always bigger than yourself. more people are taking it in, especially if you decide to bring it out to the public. So despite however you feel like you might be getting represented at any period of time, it's important to just continue to create. And even in that, if it feels like, this will never be seen, it will be. It definitely will be. And that's just one of those things you have to trust if you do things with the utmost due diligence and faith and just belief in the progression of life. You gotta trust things will make it out there and they will be seen. So that's all the more reason why you gotta continue working. And if not for yourself, for everyone that comes after you.
I mean, like, I think that really talks about like an art practice that you continually revisit is really an exercise of like renewed faith and hope, right? The climate changes constantly, how you relate these political things shifts dramatically. But to be able to go back to this space, I think can be so rich. But it is work. That's the other part of it, is that it takes a lot of work, the ability to come and do these things and show up constantly. I mean, you mentioned bell hooks earlier. I think about this piece of writing, is it the margin as a space of radical openness? To be able to, like, in these dark moments, be able to resource yourself in community, to find ways of renewing faith, new avenues, new possibilities of moving forward, of breaking yourself out of it, of possibly ushering this light in.
So I think about some of Dr. David Driskell's words, I guess just thinking about showing up. We get a chance to show up, but Dr. David Driskell also says that the artists, we have the ability to see things in a different kind of light. And in that different kind of light, when we show up, we get to show and also express in another way that I've read some of his work, where he talked about one of his students saying, like, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna make this, and like, do it for you though. But in doing it for you, you get a chance to acknowledge that, you being an artist, you're extraordinary, because again, your gifts are coming from somewhere. Again, he said, like, God, creator, universe, wherever it is, you acknowledge that. And being able to acknowledge that again, then we get to show up as we are, who we are. We don't have to look different or to make ourselves something more than what we are. But again, we get to show up as our true, authentic selves in whatever space we enter in. And I don't have to, again, as an artist, as a Black woman, as a mother, as a wife, try to hide or cover who it is that I am, but I actually get a chance to let my light shine.
I think about kind of a specific experience in undergrad where I had a conversation with my mentor at the time, LaToya Ruby Frazier, about how my work comes across and who understands it and who it's for. And essentially what I walked away with was this idea that my work doesn't have to be for everyone, but when I put the work in, and I do put the work in, it comes through. It's in the work. And if people either choose not to do the work to really view it in an active way, then that's not for me to worry about. They're the ones who are missing out on that. And for me, that was like a really kind of aha moment in a private art school where there's lots of competition and it's not always the healthiest kind of place. And that really felt like a freeing moment where, I know I'm putting in the work and I can't not do the work because being a storyteller is who I am. and I'm sure I have ancestors who were creative storytellers as well. I know I do. I know my ancestors were, and are still with me and inspire me to do it today. So I'm gonna make that work, and it doesn't exist in a vacuum, and there will always be community. I know that we are a community, and so I know there are people who are there for me and who I will be there for, regardless of whether we're in the light or not.
Thank you so much. I think we're to the point of where we're going to turn it over to the audience for some questions. So, anyone out there? If not, we can continue talking. But while you gather your thoughts, I'm going to ask this one more question because I really want to get this question out. But on the last note where we left off on kind of talking about the importance of naming, or Black artists naming their work and ensuring that it doesn't get lost without the light. I want to ask, like, how do you want your work to be labeled or referred to or documented as?
I mean, it's hard to be able to think about the work in a discrete way, especially when you see, like, you know, Dr. David Driskell's capacity as an educator, as an artist, as a collector, as a community builder, that he lived a life as an artful action, right? So if we think about it in those terms, like, for me, it's like through exuberance, it's through dance and a rhythm and color and movement in the backdrop of New England, you know? To be able, it's as if like you see the flash of a bird that shouldn't be here, or maybe out of season, and then it's gone. So just that enough for me, that ephemeral bit of wonder is really where it renders itself down to.
I want to be known as an artist, but again, if you have to put descriptors to what it is that I do, then I'm also okay with that. So I am a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a Black woman, I am a military vet, I am a scholar, I'm an artist philosopher, I'm an international community artist philosopher who travels. Again, like, so you can, I can go on and on and on, but again, whatever those descriptors are that people need to try to figure out, and try, well, because one thing is that everybody's going to try to box you in, but I get out, like Lauryn Hill said, she said, I get out of all your boxes. So one thing that I want everybody to remember is that I'm free. And so again, that sense of freedom is the other word that you actually have to add to who Dr. Rakisha Mesker is.
I am allergic to categorization. Of course, there are terms that help define me for other people. I'm Peruvian, I'm adopted, I'm Jewish, I'm a genderqueer pansexual, I'm neurodivergent. Yes, I'm all these things. I'm not one of them, but I'm all of them, and all of that together is what makes me who I am and is what makes my work what it is. And in grad school, I had this really revolutionary kind of moment, and I wish I could remember exactly when it was, where being in a photography program, completely removed frames and squares from my work. And so I no longer work with rectangular photographs. I engage more with medium, and it's become more sculptural and three-dimensional as I continue. And that was really in response to being in New Mexico during the first Trump administration and thinking about borders and how they kind of box us in, and how they're not real. They're imposed on us, and they are real, but they also are not. And our connections transcend these imaginary borders. And so that's always very much kind of at the center of my work and also the connections that I try to make with people, with remembering that Indigenous peoples from South Central and North America had connection prior to colonization. And those stories still exist through our kind of material trading and stories. So that's how I feel about categories.
I think I just hope people take it as the way they see it. I think the work is just as much of a mystery to me as it might be to someone else, really. So, I mean, like, I look at some work sometimes, especially like abstract work, and I'm like, oh wow, this makes me feel this way, it reminds me of this, it's whatever it is. And I kind of lock into that, and then like a single painting will be like, this is what this is for me. And I would hate for the artist to come up to me and be like, actually, you got it all wrong, my friend. And that would just be like kind of devastating, you know? And so for me, as far as like, if you see the work in one way and it makes you feel this way and you make that connection, that's what it's supposed to be. That's what my work is. So it can be defined in whatever way you see it, and good or bad, that's what it is for you. If there's a common thread, there's a common thread. If there's not, there's not. It is what it is, and hopefully you see something in it, you make that connection. And I'm not gonna tell you you're wrong.
So I want to say thank you to you all. Y'all missed y'all question and answer portion. We took it back. I used the time. So I want to say thank you again to our fellows for joining us, for answering the call. Anytime Indigo reaches out, you're always enthusiastically responding. So I just want to say thank you again for showing up, sharing your stories, speaking so openly and freely. In freedom, yes. So to our audience, I didn't forget about you. Remember I said I had homework? Mm-hmm. I remember. So your homework today is to make sure that you view the exhibition that's currently on view, yes. You're also going to follow our fellows. Yes, you are. Follow their careers, support them. Bring community. And quickly, I'd like to do a mentorship. You're going to go home and watch the film, get all cozy, and then finally, you're going to support Indigo Arts Alliance. And with their giving, people, I'm not afraid to say it. Organizations like us, small, and we want to be a legacy organization. We want to have this conversation 100 years from now. Again, talking to the brilliance of how artists are consistently being inspired by the brilliance of Dr. David Driskell. So thank you for showing up. Thank you for being a part, creating space, holding space for us to be open and talking so freely with you. So enjoy your evening. Thank you again.